Hi, my name is Kate Madden, and I'm coming to you from Calgary, Alberta. This is not a travel video. It is a story about travel. I was in Italy and at the Vatican just last week. It is a story that takes place on pilgrimage, really. It's not a religious video either, per se. I do talk about religion a lot. This is a story about shame and guilt, redemption, freedom, and emancipation. It's a story about an existential question that has haunted me my entire life. Can you be trans and Catholic? If you're trying to figure out your gender identity, or you're wrestling with your faith community, maybe this video is for you. So let's get at it. The news that came out of the Vatican just last week on 2-3 days after I was there, on June 3rd, 2019, upset a lot of folks in the trans community. I know it really hurt me as someone who is trans and Catholic. Throughout transition, I've never said that I'm not Catholic. I don't know whether to speak about my faith in the past or the present tense, but my faith froze me. I loved being Catholic. I loved the rhythm of the liturgy. Sacraments were more than symbols. It was an opportunity to participate in creation and in salvation history with God. But my faith froze me. The reason I was frozen is because I didn't have the language to articulate what it was I was experiencing inside. That turmoil that drove me to seek comfort in that faith. I was 16. A priest told me that it was okay that I was gay. I fought that conversation pretty hard because I knew that I wasn't gay. And just to be very clear, I have been blessed by the men in my life who gave their lives in service to the church and their communities. And they taught me a model of selfless love that I still take to this day. And with very few exceptions, I had a mostly overwhelming positive experience of every priest in my life. When I was 21, someone else who's now a priest as well tried to encourage me to come out of the closet. But I knew I wasn't a gay man, even though I tripped his gaydar. And I fought those conversations because I knew that identity wasn't mine. Really, I knew I was trans, but I just didn't know how to say it. So I dove into my faith deeply. I spent time in a seminary studying to be a priest. I lost myself in marriage, in Catholic marriage, and I always sought refuge from what I thought was confusion in my head, but really was just fear. I was afraid of my parents. I was afraid of my school. I was afraid of the church. Afraid of my spouse, of losing my family. Everywhere I turned, this inner voice told me to be afraid. Whole life, I just wanted to be loved for who I was, truly. And I never felt it. I got to the point in my life where I wanted to die more than I wanted to live. And that's really when I knew I needed to transition. I needed to live and love authentically and fully as myself. And I think John Paul II talks about love as being total, free, open, and giving. And ultimately, that's what I aspired to. I realized I was never confused and I was only afraid. So I needed to transition and lose everything. But that question of being Catholic and trans still stayed with me. My kids are in Catholic school. My former partner wants to get an annulment in the church. So I'm still defined and still in relation to the church. And really, I knew the answer all along to that basic existential question of being Catholic and trans. And it's a resounding no, insofar as the Catechism teaches about living a chaste lifestyle and the very strict interpretation of the binary male and female. In fact, that whole document that the Vatican released last week is titled that, Male and Female. He created them. And so last week, the Vatican issued a statement on being trans. And at first I was really angry. I realized it was just, I was hurt. Wasn't going to do it, but I actually went and read all 31 pages of the source document. I might be the only trans person in all of North America who did that, but I did. Also might be one of the only trans people who has a background as deeply entrenched in the church as I do. So I feel uniquely qualified to speak a little bit to this. One of the things that I want to take from the document is that even though the church used really inflammatory, hurtful language, and the sound bites didn't really get into it. Like, I've got a page of them here, people. The church is asking for dialogue. And so I'm going to start with the end of the document, because we've all heard the headlines about the document. But the Vatican says, the path of dialogue, listening, and reasoning, proposing is the most effective way towards a positive transformation of concerns and misunderstanding, as well as to a network that is more open and human. And then it immediately says, although we want this dialogue, we retain our own vision of human sexuality. So basically, pound sand. They refer to gender theory repeatedly throughout the document as if it's some sort of secret plot. And they view the oscillation between male and female as an affront to the traditional framework of the family. It's almost as if they're poking fun at us, in that when they talk about how we annihilate the very concept of nature, they then say we also reinforce it in the very next sentence by making that choice between the oscillation between male and female. If anyone in the Vatican is watching this, there is no choice. I never asked for this. I ran as far as I could from this for as many years as I could. And I guess like Moses with the burning bush, or the constant reference to sacrifice, burnt offerings through the Hebrew scriptures and through the Christian scriptures. You just gotta let that fire burn you and offer that suffering up and purify yourself. And I think in a very powerful way, that's what transition has done for me. There is no ideology with regards to being trans. We're not trying to threaten the traditional framework of the family. We're just trying to live and love as ourselves. And while as a parent, I fully support that the family is the primary educator of the child. And we also need to trust the educators themselves as the professionals, as the experts in pedagogical methods. They're the ones who've studied it. Just as you've studied how many angels danced on that pinhead. That's what Aquinas said, right? We need to partner together. And I'm not sure that this document really is a call to dialogue or partnership. We need to partner together. And I'm not sure that this document really is a call to dialogue or partnership. I'm willing to talk, but I'm not willing to debate my existence or the existence of trans kids, because I was a trans kid. And what I saw in the Vatican, what I really learned is being on pilgrimage to free myself of shame and guilt is I asked myself, what does Christ offer? And does the Catholic Church have a monopoly on that? So when we look at the Trinity of the Creator, the Redeemer, and the Sanctifier, and if we understand Jesus as the incarnation of God's love in the world, how can we reflect that back out to the world? And one of the things I've learned about love is it's really hard to love unless you love yourself. It's really that simple. And unless you make yourself vulnerable by being authentic and your true self. The document talks about a universal vocation to giving, or self-giving, I think they say. But really, there's a universal vocation by baptism to holiness, and holiness is just closeness with God. And if we were made in the image of God, then doesn't that make us worthy of being loved, being Catholic, participating in the sacraments? So I'm free now, not with celebration, but just with a realization. And that realization is that there is no monopoly on God's love or the expression of that. I've met some wonderful, passionate Christians in the local queer community. In trying to wrap my head around this video, and a lot of people heard me talk for a lot of weeks about this video. Think back to Psalm 118, and I don't know that I'm the stone, but as a community, it's easy to feel that we are the stone that the builders rejected. But I wonder if by challenging that traditional binary of male and female, if we as a trans community of non-binary people, of gender non-conforming folks, if we have an opportunity to really reset a conversation. And a lot of what the church teaches is based on natural law. But our experience of natural law, I think as humans, can evolve and change over time. Maybe we're at the beginning of that evolution as a community, and we can help push that along by engaging in this dialogue, despite the inflammatory, hurtful language. Seriously, get it together. Read the gospel. I read about a radical who was put to death for challenging the status quo that is written about in that 31-page document. And I think about who Christ came for when I look through that, when I read the gospel. And it really is a radical message of dispossession, of being marginalized, of rejecting privilege. When you look at the people that Jesus associated with, it was the sick, the poor, the hungry, the sex workers. It was the tax collectors, the people who were not a part of the community, the status quo. But he promised wholeness in his love and in that incarnation of God's love. And so I felt free realizing that at the Vatican. I felt liberated in a way that was noticeable by my brother. And I left it behind, that fear, that shame, that guilt. Yeah, it was hard to read the news just a few days later. And it is awfully Pharisaic to think about it that way. When I was studying theology, one of the things that we were taught was that you needed to be precise. And bad theology can kill. So we exist in the likeness of God. And that's not up for debate or dialogue. And this is really the power of my experience of sacramental expression. My life is not a symbol or a theory or an ideology. My love is real. We exist. We are real. My love, my life is authentic. We can share that love and live our lives free from shame and guilt. I hope you've liked this video, found value in it. If so, please like, subscribe, share. If you are in the Vatican and you want to talk, give me a call. I'm always open for dialogue.